How's everyone doing today? And I hope well. And I hope warm. It's chilly right now. That's the reason we're talking about getting ready for winter. For myself, I had a deer hunting adventure planned for this morning, and it involved a kayak and a large reservoir and a really hard to access hunting spot. But we had some bad weather move in last night, and it was windy and it was cold this morning. And water and cold, they just don't mix. And that's something that's always stuck with me because of an incident that happened on a local lake some years ago. And two guys were out fishing. It was winter time, and one of them fell out of the boat. He lost his balance, fell out. And he came back up to the surface and told his friend, well, I'm going to go down and pull my boots off, undo my laces, because his boots were full of water, and he thought it'd make it a lot easier getting back into the boat. And he went down to undo his laces. And he drowned. Hypothermia got him, just cold water. And most of us are aware of the dangers of cold water, you know, and how quick hypothermia can hit us. But it still happens. Matter of fact, I was talking about my adventures with a kayak this morning and deciding not to. Well, about an hour ago, I saw on the news where there were 3 guys out last night in kayaks, and one of them drowned this morning. And actually, they would have been upstream from where I was planning on going. Not that many miles. So yeah, it's so easy to forget about how dangerous the cold can be. And you know, we tend to think of it with water. But then just a few years ago, we had a young lady that had just gotten a house, and she was moving in. Well, the power company didn't turn her power on the day that she was moving in. And she decided, well, it's not that cold. I'll just stay here tonight and bundle up. It'll be okay. And she died of hypothermia that night. And college student. That seems to, anyway, that was just really bad and such a waste, you know, someone with their whole life ahead of them. But that's what cold weather can do, and we seem to forget that. All right, well, today, since I couldn't go hunting, I decided, okay, I need to do a few things to get ready for winter time, and this winter in particular. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is getting ready for winter and getting ready for this winter, because this one ain't like a lot of the other winters we faced. The first thing I want to talk about real quickly is just emergency preparedness. And most of us are familiar with this, but nonetheless, a lot of us still end up in precarious situations. And I'm thinking of Texas just this past February. A freak winter storm came in, temperatures they weren't used to, it knocked out the power grid, and a lot of people were hurting during that time. A lot of people. I believe officially over 200 died, and unofficially I've seen numbers up over 700. Okay, easiest way I know to be prepared for power outage, you know, just a short-term emergency, is have a kerosene heater on hand, a portable kerosene heater. The young lady I mentioned that died of hypothermia staying in her house the first night, if she had had one of these, she'd be here today. All right, they smell. Kerosene's messy, but it works. And kerosene lasts a really long time. You can store kerosene, no problem, 2 to 5 years. And it can go longer than that. Okay, so that's just a really good backup emergency, you know, thing right here, kerosene heater. And those of us in the warmer climates down south, we're the world's worst about not being prepared for such a thing. And myself included, I went and bought this today. I've been needing to get one of these. I've had power go out before. We get the occasional snow here. It's not uncommon for us to get some cold weather where I'm at, and occasionally our power goes out. Well, this is something I should have had a long time ago. And for those of us not familiar with kerosene heaters, I'm very familiar with them. We grew up with them, used them a lot. But a lot of you I know aren't familiar with them. Be careful. I mean, just read all the safety stuff and take it serious. Put kerosene in it, not gasoline. Every year there's houses burned down here with people that are using these to heat with, and somebody pours gasoline in the tank and it basically blows up and their house burns down. All right, so get you some kerosene cans to go along with the kerosene heater if you don't already have one for emergencies. And you might want a couple of these put back just in case. And a kerosene can is going to be blue. That way you know this is not gasoline. And never put gasoline in one of these, ever, under any circumstances. All right. That can get you through a lot right there. And if I had to, in an emergency situation, I could probably take this cover off, put a pot on top of here, and boil water. If I can boil water, I can cook food. So rice and beans, but it's food and it's hot, and we're talking emergency short-term situations here. Plenty of fuel on hand. Get you a 5-gallon container. I got 2.5-gallon containers just because they're so much easier to lug around in a 5-gallon container. So that's just a little something I did today getting ready for winter. Now, this being 2021 and we're going into 2022 with the winter coming on, things are different than most years, and we all know it. But you need to be prepared for shortages, because we still have them, and I don't think they're going to last all that long, but for right now, we got them. And so if your furnace goes out, it might take longer to get it fixed than normal. If your heat pump or whatever you're using to heat with goes out, it might take longer to get it fixed. I've got my friend Joey, he does heating and cooling for a living, and they're constantly having problems getting things this year. 1 month they can't get, the units themselves. The next month they can't get controllers. The next month they can't get this. It seems like they're constantly running into stuff. They'll get supplies for a month and they can't. Y'all know the drill. You're all experiencing the shortages. All right. Well, that's where having something as backup for heat comes in, just like this. And you don't want to wait till the last second to get one of these because of shortages. You might be able to get one, you might not. It's the same way for kerosene cans. I did not see a lot of cans today when I went out looking. So these are things you probably want to get now instead of waiting till there's a problem. And if there's a problem, even during normal times, every store is going to sell out before the storm gets there, because everybody's going to be watching the news. Oh, look, a winter storm's coming. Power's out. Let's run and go grab all the heaters. That's normal times. Don't wait till then. Not this year. This isn't the year. This particular one, I don't know how well it's going to work, but this is a Dynaglow, and I say that because when you wait till the last second, you end up having to grab just whatever you can get. And most of them are made in China. And anybody that watches the channel regularly knows I try real hard not to buy anything made in China. It's made in South Korea. South Koreans, they're good people. There's democracy, not communists. So that's the advantage of being prepared. Getting prepared early, you can get what you're looking for. Okay, now more shortages. I'm hearing we're going to have food shortages. I don't know. I mean, seriously, we probably won't. I don't expect this to be anything like 2020 as far as shortages, but that's what I'm hearing, and I don't mean from the prepper people, that are always ready for that, end of civilization food shortage. I mean, I was watching an economic channel I watch regularly, and the guy just does economic analysis as boring as it can be. Steve Van Meter, if any of you want to check him out, he's really good insight into what's going on in the economy. But it's strictly just straight up boring economic stuff. I'll leave a link for any of you that are interested, but he was mentioning shortages. Okay. When someone like that just does boring economic analysis and charts, when they start talking about shortages, it gets my attention. And he was mentioning, people might start hoarding, and that's, I think what he was referencing could be the biggest issue. But he also mentioned that China has already warned its people stock up on food. Now there's going to be shortages. All right, so this would be a good time to make sure you got some things on hand. That's all. The shortages probably aren't going to last long, but when you need something, it's just nice to have it, especially when we're talking about food. So we touched on the emergency stuff, preparedness, just for a temporary, sudden, okay, power's out. And there's so much more you could look up on that, so tons of information on it. I think we hit the big thing. And we touched on the shortages this year, which, that's something to really keep in mind. Okay, the other thing is gas prices, the economic impacts this year. Okay, I'm hearing gas prices are going to be really high come wintertime. And when I say gas, not just for your car, but natural gas, so many of you heat with, plus electricity is going to be high too. But I'm hearing natural gas is going to be up there. Okay, I don't know how many of you remember the heating bills in 2008, but it wasn't uncommon at all for someone to go to the mailbox and, oh look, a $500 heating bill for natural gas. And I'm talking about people that were used to seeing $200 heating bills or $150 heating bills. Okay, that's a shock for a lot of people when you're not used to that kind of, raise in rates, you might say. Keep some cash on hand this winter, just in case, be prepared. I know so many of you judge what you can buy by how much money you have left over at the end of each month. Okay, I got $400 left over each month for my bills, so therefore I can get this car because it's only going to be a $350 a month payment, and I have $50 left over. So I know a lot of you, that's how you calculate what you can and can't afford. Well, doing it that way, it's really easy to get maxed out on what you're paying. Well, then you have something where all of a sudden you got a spike in energy prices, even if it's just temporary. But if you've got 2 or 3 months, 4 months of all of a sudden, your heating bills tripled or quadrupled, and you're living month to month anyway, that hurts. Okay, you can get through it, but it hurts. So anyway, that's in the case of an emergency situation, power outage type thing. If you've got an emergency fund on hand, okay, worst case, drive to Florida or California where it's warm until they get the power back on. All right, cash leaves you options. And that's the thing about cash. As long as you have cash, you have options. Make sure you leave yourself some options and just be prepared for that huge increase in energy, even those of us on electricity. And if gas goes up, everything's going up. Again, it's probably just going to be temporary, but something just be prepared of, mindful of. I know this was some pretty simple, basic stuff, just the simple emergency preparedness that you can dive a lot deeper into, the being prepared for the shortages that we've all been dealing with anyway and are all aware of pretty much, and the being prepared for the spike in energy costs that we're all feeling at the gas pumps right now. But this past February, with that going on in Texas, I felt really bad for those people. Well, as just an individual, there's nothing I could do to help them. I mean, on a scale like that. But I could make a video today to remind everybody, hey, be prepared. Start thinking about this. Don't end up in that situation. Okay, so that was why I really felt like I needed to do this today. And then this is also starting to touch on some other things that they're worth thinking about and are directly related to simple living. All right, for example, if you were to insulate your home better, all right, that means you're not going to require as many external resources, natural gas, electricity, whatever you're heating with. You're not going to require as much of it to heat your home. All right, so you're going to be less dependent upon that. And if you're less dependent upon those external resources, that makes you less dependent upon money to pay for those resources. If you're less dependent upon money, that makes you less dependent upon your job. Okay. And with a lot of what's going on right now, mandates and so forth, this is a good time not to be dependent upon your job, or at least as dependent. Insulating your home, it's not going to make you independent, but it's going to make you less dependent. And us Americans especially, we pride ourselves on independence. We've got a whole declaration about it. We're not independent. We're as dependent as we can be, and that's literally what independent means, is to not be dependent. And think about how dependent we are. All right, so that's just some things to think about there. And if you apply that way of thinking to everything in your life, how can I be less dependent upon external resources? Well, everything you do in that direction makes you more independent. That's something worth considering. And then for us Christians and for Jewish people, our religion tells us, go help others. That's a big part of being a Christian or Jew. And in Old Testament, New Testament, it doesn't matter. It says over and over, help others. Help the widows, help the orphans. Okay, you can't help feed the hungry if you don't have any food and you're starving yourself. I mean, seriously. You can't help support charities if you're in need of help yourself. So a big part for those of us that just believe in helping others, you don't even have to be Christian or Jewish. If you just believe in helping your neighbors, a big part of that's being in a position where you can help your neighbors if needed. And that's something I'm just really realizing. There's a huge responsibility that goes along with that whole notion of believing I should help my neighbors. And that means I have a responsibility to be responsible, at least for me. If I can't help myself, I surely can't help anybody else. As simple and basic as that was, I think that covered it for being prepared for winter in 2022, because it's almost here. And I'm very much looking forward to reading the comments on some other approaches for the emergency preparedness part, for the being prepared for the spike in energy costs, the shortages. Okay, and we've all dealt with different parts of all of those things at different times. And for me, I know there are a lot better heating alternatives. I wish I had a wood stove. Grew up with a wood stove, and you've got all the advantages of wood stove. You can cook on it, it's there, it's not going to break, so forth. I mentioned before, I'm looking to get a little piece of land out in the country and home out there. Part of that's I want a wood stove. I miss it. And that's getting back into the being more independent versus dependent. But I don't have that right now, and so many others don't. No room for a wood stove, no chimney, whatever the case may be. Right, so this is the best alternative I know of if you don't have a wood stove. But I'm sure there's better alternatives, and that's why I'm looking forward to the comments and so forth. All right, I think that was it. God bless, and y'all have a wonderful evening.